The courthouse fell into absolute silence the moment Vivian Harrington walked through those mahogany doors, wearing a white Chanel suit that cost more than most people's yearly salary, her diamond-studded heels clicking against the marble floor like tiny declarations of superiority. And if you think wealth can rewrite the rules of justice, you're about to witness what happens when arrogance meets accountability. But first, hit that like button because this story will restore your faith in the justice system. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of Courtroom 7, casting long shadows across the polished wooden benches where spectators sat shoulder to shoulder, their collective breath held in anticipation. Judge Elias Monroe sat behind his elevated bench, his weathered hands folded before him, his steel-gray eyes fixed on the defendant's table, where 23-year-old Vivian Harrington sat examining her manicured nails, as if the entire proceeding was nothing more than an inconvenience interrupting her shopping schedule. Her father, Richard Harrington, founder and CEO of Harrington Global Industries, one of the world's largest tech conglomerates, sat 3 rows behind her, his expression a mixture of controlled fury and absolute confidence that his daughter would walk out of this courtroom without consequence. The charge was vehicular manslaughter while under the influence, and the details were as horrifying as they were clear. On the evening of March 15th, Vivian Harrington had attended an exclusive charity gala at the Ritz-Carlton, an event where champagne flowed like water and where the city's elite gathered to congratulate themselves on their generosity while sipping $30,000 bottles of wine. Witnesses would later testify that Vivian had consumed at least 7 glasses of champagne, 3 vodka martinis, and multiple shots of tequila during the 4-hour event. Security footage showed her stumbling toward the valet stand, laughing loudly, her designer clutch slipping from her grasp twice before she managed to retrieve her keys for her midnight blue Lamborghini Aventador. What happened next was captured on multiple traffic cameras and dashcam footage from nearby vehicles. At approximately 11:47 p.m., Vivian's Lamborghini was recorded traveling at 93 miles per hour down Riverside Boulevard, a residential street with a posted speed limit of 35. Witnesses reported seeing her vehicle weaving between lanes, running 2 red lights, and nearly sideswiping a family van before reaching the intersection of Riverside and Oakmont Avenue. Maria Chen, a 41-year-old emergency room nurse at St. E. Vincent's Hospital, was crossing that intersection on her bicycle, returning home after a 12-hour shift saving lives. She never saw the Lamborghini coming. The impact threw Maria Chen 30 feet through the air. Her bicycle was crushed beyond recognition, wrapped around the Lamborghini's front end like twisted metal sculpture. Maria landed on the pavement with catastrophic injuries: a fractured skull, broken spine, shattered pelvis, multiple internal hemorrhages. She died at the scene, her hospital ID badge still clipped to her scrubs, her hands still bearing the faint scent of antiseptic from washing them countless times that day while caring for patients who needed her. Vivian Harrington's Lamborghini came to rest wrapped around a traffic light pole. When officers arrived, they found her attempting to walk away from the scene, her phone pressed to her ear, her words slurred and panicked. "Daddy, I need you. Something happened. I need you to fix this. You always fix everything. I can't go to jail, Daddy. Do you know who we are?" Her blood alcohol content measured at 24, 3 times the legal limit. Toxicology reports revealed traces of cocaine in her system. The investigation was thorough, the evidence overwhelming. And yet, here she sat 6 months later, her defense team having delayed the trial multiple times with procedural motions. Her father having reportedly approached the district attorney's office with settlement discussions that the prosecutors firmly rejected. Judge Monroe's courtroom was known for being impenetrable to influence. His reputation preceded him. 37 years on the bench, never once swayed by wealth or political pressure, a man who treated janitors and CEOs with identical respect, who believed that the scales of justice should never tip toward money or status. His chambers contained no photographs with politicians, no awards from corporate sponsors, just law books, a picture of his late wife, and a framed copy of the Constitution. The prosecutor, District Attorney Catherine Wells, rose from her table, her movements deliberate and confident. She was a woman in her early 50s, with sharp features and sharper instincts, someone who had built her career on holding powerful people accountable when they believed themselves untouchable. She approached the center of the courtroom, her heels clicking softly against the floor, and addressed Judge Monroe with measured respect. "Your Honor, the people are ready to proceed with opening statements." Judge Monroe nodded once, his expression unreadable. "You may proceed, Ms. Wells." Catherine Wells turned to face the jury, 12 citizens who had been carefully selected through a grueling voir dire process, people from various backgrounds, occupations, and experiences, united by their commitment to evaluate evidence fairly. She let the silence stretch for a moment, allowing the weight of the moment to settle over the room like a heavy blanket. "Members of the jury," she began, her voice clear and unwavering, "you are about to hear a story about choices and consequences, about a young woman who had every advantage life could offer, wealth beyond measure, education from the finest institutions, opportunities that most people only dream about, and who chose, repeatedly and knowingly, to place her own selfish desires above the safety and lives of others. On March 15th of this year, the defendant, Vivian Harrington, made a series of choices that resulted in the death of Maria Chen, a dedicated healthcare worker, a beloved daughter, a cherished friend, a woman who spent her last day on earth helping others survive their darkest moments. She moved slowly toward the evidence, where a photograph of Maria Chen stood on a beautiful image showing Maria in her hospital, smiling warmly, her eyes reflecting. Maria Chen emigrated from Taiwan 20 with nothing. She worked 2 jobs while she spent 15 years in emergency. Vincent's Hospital, working night shifts, holiday shifts, the most difficult assignments, always volunteering for the hardest cases because she believed that everyone deserved exceptional care regardless of their ability to pay. Her colleagues describe her as the person who made terrible shifts bearable, who remembered every patient's name, who would hold the hand of a scared child or a dying elderly person with equal compassion. She was heading home after saving lives for 12 straight hours when Vivian Harrington's Lamborghini, traveling at nearly triple the speed limit, struck her and killed her instantly. Catherine Wells paused, letting the image of Maria sink into the consciousness of every person in that courtroom. The defense will tell you this was a tragic accident. They will use words like mistake and error in judgment. But this was no accident. An accident is an unforeseen event, an occurrence beyond reasonable control. What Vivian Harrington did was make deliberate choices. The choice to consume massive quantities of alcohol, the choice to use cocaine, the choice to get behind the wheel of a high-performance vehicle, the choice to drive at reckless speeds through residential neighborhoods, the choice to run red lights, the choice to treat public streets like her personal racetrack. And when confronted with the consequences of those choices, when faced with the reality of having taken an innocent life, her first instinct wasn't remorse. It was to call her father and ask him to fix this, because she believed that wealth could erase even death itself. Vivian shifted in her seat, crossing her legs with an audible sigh of impatience. Her lead attorney, Marcus Whitfield, a man whose $1,000 haircut and custom Italian suit announced his clientele before he spoke a word, placed a hand on her arm as if to steady her, but she shrugged it off with visible annoyance. Catherine Wells continued, her voice building in intensity. Over the course of this trial, you will hear from witnesses who saw the defendant consuming alcohol throughout the evening. You will see traffic camera footage showing her vehicle speeding recklessly through city streets. You will hear from the first responders who found Maria Chen's broken body in the street and Vivian Harrington attempting to flee the scene while calling her father for help. You will hear from toxicology experts about the defendant's blood alcohol level and drug use. You will see the physics reports demonstrating the impossible task of stopping a Lamborghini traveling at 93 miles per hour. And you will hear from Maria Chen's sister about the immeasurable void left by this preventable death. The evidence in this case is not complicated. It is clear, it is overwhelming, and it points to one inescapable conclusion. Vivian Harrington chose her own pleasure over Maria Chen's life, and Maria Chen paid the ultimate price for that choice. She returned to her table, her opening statement delivered with surgical precision. Judge Monroe turned his attention to the defense table. "Mr. Whitfield, your opening statement." Marcus Whitfield stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced smoothness, his expression calibrated to project confidence without arrogance. He was a defense attorney whose client list read like a Forbes billionaire index, someone who specialized in making uncomfortable realities disappear through legal maneuvering and carefully crafted narratives. "Your Honor, members of the jury," he began, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. My client, Vivian Harrington, is a 23-year-old woman who has made mistakes, as all young people do.
What happened on March 15th was undoubtedly a tragedy. Maria Chen's death is mourned by everyone, including my client. But this case is not as simple as the prosecution would have you believe. Yes, Vivian consumed alcohol that evening. She was at a charity event where drinking is common and socially expected among adults. Yes, the accident occurred and resulted in Ms. Chen's death, a fact that has devastated my client and her family.
But the prosecution's narrative of deliberate recklessness ignores crucial context. He moved toward the jury box, making eye contact with several jurors. Vivian Harrington has no prior criminal record. She has never been arrested, never been in trouble with the law. She is a graduate of Stanford University, a young woman who has contributed to numerous charitable causes, someone who was actually attending a charity gala to support underprivileged children when this tragedy occurred. The prosecution wants you to see a monster, but what you'll actually see is a young woman who made an error in judgment that she will regret for the rest of her life. We do not contest that Ms. Chen died, nor do we contest that my client was driving the vehicle involved in the collision. What we contest is the characterization of my client's mental state and the rush to judgment that has occurred in this case because of who her father is. Vivian Harrington is not on trial for being wealthy. She is not on trial for having a successful father. She is on trial for her actions that evening. And when you examine the evidence fairly, you will see that this was a tragic accident, not vehicular manslaughter. He returned to his seat, and Judge Monroe nodded slightly. Thank you, counsel. Ms. Wells, call your first witness. The people call Officer David Martinez. A uniformed police officer in his mid-30s took the stand, his posture straight, his expression serious. After being sworn in, Catherine Wells approached him with a measured pace. Officer Martinez, were you one of the first responders to the scene on March 15th? Yes, ma'am. I received the dispatch call at 11:52 p.m. for a vehicle collision with injuries at Riverside and Oakmont. And what did you observe when you arrived? Officer Martinez's jaw tightened slightly, the memory clearly difficult. I observed a midnight blue Lamborghini wrapped around a traffic signal pole. Approximately 40 feet from the vehicle, I observed a female victim lying in the roadway with catastrophic injuries. Emergency medical personnel were already on scene attempting resuscitation, but it was clear the injuries were not survivable. The bicycle the victim had been riding was mangled and attached to the front of the Lamborghini. And the defendant? I observed the defendant approximately 15 feet from her vehicle, standing upright, speaking on a cell phone. As I approached, I heard her saying, "Daddy, you need to fix this. I can't go to jail. Make this go away." She was unsteady on her feet, her speech was slurred, and I could smell a strong odor of alcohol emanating from her person. What happened next? I identified myself as a police officer and asked her to end her phone call and provide identification. She looked at me and said, "Do you know who I am? Do you know who my father is? You're making a huge mistake." I again requested identification. She became agitated and stated, "My father will have your badge. You have no idea who you're dealing with." I observed her eyes were bloodshot, her pupils were dilated, and she was exhibiting multiple signs of intoxication. I requested she submit to a field sobriety test. She refused and demanded to speak with her attorney. Catherine Wells entered Officer Martinez's body camera footage into evidence, and the jury watched as the scene unfolded exactly as he described. Vivian stumbling, slurring her words, alternating between panic and indignation, repeatedly invoking her father's name and wealth, as if they were magical incantations that could reverse reality. The cross-examination by Marcus Whitfield attempted to create doubt about the field sobriety test's reliability, about whether Vivian's unsteadiness might have been caused by shock rather than intoxication, but Officer Martinez remained calm and factual, his testimony unshakable. The prosecution called witness after witness throughout the morning and into the afternoon. A toxicologist explained the blood alcohol levels and cocaine presence with scientific precision. A traffic accident reconstruction expert used physics and mathematics to demonstrate that at 93 miles per hour, Vivian would have needed nearly 400 feet to stop her vehicle, a physical impossibility given the intersection geometry. A bartender from the Ritz-Carlton testified that he had personally served Vivian 7 champagne glasses and had observed her consuming additional drinks from other servers, that he had expressed concern about her level of intoxication to event organizers. Then Catherine Wells called Emily Chen to the stand. The courtroom seemed to collectively hold its breath as a woman in her late 40s walked slowly to the witness stand. She wore a simple black dress, her dark hair pulled back, her face bearing the unmistakable markers of profound grief, hollowed eyes, drawn features, the appearance of someone who had aged years in mere months. She was Maria Chen's older sister, her only surviving family member. After being sworn in, Emily sat with her hands folded in her lap, her back straight despite the visible trembling in her shoulders. Catherine Wells approached her with gentle respect. "Ms. Chen, I know this is incredibly difficult. Please take all the time you need." Emily nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you. Can you tell the jury about your sister Maria?" Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she spoke clearly. "Maria was my baby sister, though she was 41 years old. After our parents passed away, it was just the two of us. She was the strongest person I've ever known. When we came to this country, we had nothing." Maria was 21 years old, working as a dishwasher at a restaurant while taking English classes at night. She was determined to become a nurse because she said that sickness and injury don't care about language or money, and she wanted to help people in their most vulnerable moments. Her voice broke slightly, but she continued. "She worked so hard. Double shifts, holidays, overnight hours, the most difficult cases. She never complained. She would come home exhausted and tell me stories about the patients she helped. The child with pneumonia who recovered because Maria noticed a subtle change in breathing patterns. The elderly man who died peacefully holding Maria's hand because she refused to let him pass alone. She saved countless lives. She dedicated her entire existence to helping others. What plans did Maria have for the future?" Emily wiped her eyes with a tissue. She was finally going to take a vacation. She had never been back to Taiwan since we emigrated. She had saved enough money to visit our parents' graves, to see the places where we grew up. She had the plane ticket purchased. She was leaving in 3 weeks. Her voice cracked completely. She was so excited. She kept showing me pictures of the temple where our parents were married, planning which foods she would eat, which friends she would visit. And now she's gone. And I have to go to Taiwan alone to tell everyone that she died because someone who had everything decided that traffic laws didn't apply to her. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Several jurors wiped their eyes. Even the court reporter paused, her fingers hovering over the keys. Catherine Wells allowed the moment to breathe before asking softly, "How has Maria's death affected you?" Emily looked directly at Vivian for the first time, her gaze not angry but infinitely sad. "I wake up every morning and forget for just a moment that she's gone. Then I remember, and it's like being hit by that car all over again. I go to call her to tell her something funny that happened, and then I remember there's no one to call. I go to the hospital where she worked because I feel close to her there, and her colleagues tell me they still expect to see her walk through the door for her shift. She was my family. She was my best friend. She was the person who made me believe that goodness still exists in the world. And she was taken from this world by someone who apparently believes that wealth exempts you from basic human decency." Marcus Whitfield's cross-examination was brief and respectful. He knew better than to appear to attack a grieving sister in front of a jury, but he attempted to establish that Emily's pain, while valid, didn't change the legal standards for proving intent and culpability. Emily answered each question with quiet dignity, never raising her voice, never showing anger, just profound, unshakable sadness. The prosecution rested its case by mid-afternoon the following day, having built a prosecutorial mountain of evidence that seemed insurmountable. The defense strategy became clear during Marcus Whitfield's case presentation. He called expert witnesses who discussed the prevalence of alcohol consumption at social events, psychologists who testified about the effects of shock and trauma on behavior, character witnesses who described Vivian's charitable work and academic achievements. The defense's theory was essentially that Vivian was a good person who made a terrible mistake, that her behavior after the accident was explained by shock rather than callousness, that the prosecution was pursuing an overly harsh charge because of media attention and public pressure related to her family's wealth. Then, Marcus Whitfield made a decision that experienced trial attorneys in the gallery would later describe as catastrophically misguided. He called Vivian Harrington to testify in her own defense. She took the stand wearing a modest navy dress clearly selected by her legal team to project humility, though the Cartier bracelet on her wrist somewhat undermined that effect. She was sworn in and sat with practiced posture, her expression carefully neutral. Marcus Whitfield began with softballs: her education, her charitable work, her lack of criminal history. Vivienne answered in a voice that sounded coached, hitting the right notes of regret and remorse without quite conveying genuine emotion. Ms. Harrington, can you tell the jury about the evening of March 15th? I attended a charity gala for underprivileged children. It was an important cause that my family has supported for years. Yes, I consumed alcohol that evening. It was a social event, and I didn't realize how much I had consumed because the servers kept refilling glasses. I made the terrible decision to drive when I should have called for my driver. That decision is something I will regret for the rest of my life. And when the accident occurred, I was in shock. Complete shock. I couldn't process what had happened. I called my father because he's the person I turned to in crisis. Not because I thought he could make it disappear, but because I needed support in the most traumatic moment of my life. The testimony continued in this vein, with Vivienne presenting herself as a young woman who made an error in judgment, who felt terrible about the outcome, who understood the gravity of what occurred. It was a carefully constructed performance, and it might have been effective if Catherine Wells hadn't been waiting for her opportunity. The cross-examination began calmly, almost gently. Ms. Harrington, you testified that you didn't realize how much you had consumed. Is it your testimony that you were unaware of your own intoxication? I knew I had been drinking, but I didn't feel impaired. I thought I was fine to drive. You thought you were fine to drive at 93 miles per hour through a residential neighborhood. I don't remember the specific speed. I was just trying to get home. Catherine Wells approached the evidence table and retrieved a stack of documents. Ms. Harrington, you testified that this charity work was important to your family. Can you tell the jury how much money you personally donated to this particular charity that evening? Vivienne hesitated, clearly not expecting this line of questioning. I'm not sure of the exact amount. Let me help you. According to the charity's records, you made no donation that evening. You attended, you consumed their food and alcohol, but you contributed nothing financially. Is that correct? Marcus Whitfield stood. Objection, relevance. Judge Monroe looked at Catherine Wells, his expression neutral. Ms. Wells, Your Honor, the defendant has presented her attendance at this event as evidence of her charitable character. I'm establishing the actual nature of her participation. Overruled. The witness will answer. Vivienne's carefully maintained composure showed its first cracks. I contribute to charity in many ways. That specific evening. Is it true that you attended primarily because it was a social event where your friends would be, not because of the charity itself? That's not fair. I care about... You testified that you called your father for support, not to make the situation disappear. But we heard Officer Martinez's body camera footage where you said, and I quote, "Make this go away." What did you mean by that? I was in shock. I wasn't thinking clearly. You weren't thinking clearly enough to feel remorse for killing someone, but you were thinking clearly enough to invoke your father's wealth and threaten a police officer's career. That's not what I... Catherine Wells' voice sharpened. Ms. Harrington, at any point that evening before you got into your vehicle, did you consider calling a cab, calling your personal driver, whom you mentioned you employ, calling a friend? I thought I was fine. Did you consider that maybe, just maybe, after consuming 7 glasses of champagne, 3 martinis, multiple tequila shots, and cocaine, you might not be the best judge of whether you were fine? I didn't use cocaine. Ms. Harrington, the toxicology report showing cocaine in your system has been entered into evidence and not contested by your own expert witnesses. Are you now claiming that report is false? Vivienne's face flushed. I might have tried some earlier in the evening. I don't remember. You don't remember consuming an illegal narcotic, but you clearly remember your state of mind regarding your ability to drive. Marcus Whitfield stood again. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. Ms. Wells. Rephrase. Catherine Wells nodded. Ms. Harrington, you've testified that you feel terrible about what happened. Can you tell the jury what you've done since March to honor Maria Chen's memory? The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Vivienne's mouth opened and closed several times. What do you mean? Have you donated to any causes in her name? Volunteered at hospitals where she worked? reached out to her sister Emily to express your remorse directly. Anything to demonstrate that your regret extends beyond your own legal jeopardy. Vivienne's expression shifted, the mask of remorse slipping to reveal something harder underneath. I've been dealing with this trial. My legal team advised me not to. Your legal team advised you not to show basic human decency? Not to acknowledge that you took a life? That's not what I meant. Catherine Wells's voice remained calm, but each word landed like a hammer. What did you mean when you told Officer Martinez, "Do you know who I am?" I was upset. You were asserting that your identity, your family's wealth, should exempt you from being treated like anyone else who kills someone while driving drunk and high? No. Then what were you asserting? Vivienne's composure finally shattered completely. Her face contorted with frustration and anger, and her true nature, the entitled arrogance that had been simmering beneath the coached responses, erupted like a volcano. You people don't understand anything, she snapped, her voice rising. I made one mistake. One! And you're all acting like I'm some kind of monster. I didn't mean for anyone to die. It was an accident. I've had to deal with this hanging over my head for months, my reputation destroyed, my life put on hold, all because of one stupid night. Do you have any idea what this has been like for me? The stress, the media attention, having to see my family's name dragged through the mud? The courtroom erupted in gasps and whispers. Judge Monroe's gavel came down sharply. Order! But Vivienne wasn't finished. The words kept pouring out, her carefully constructed defense crumbling to reveal the rot underneath. That woman shouldn't have been riding a bicycle at night. Who rides a bicycle in the middle of the road? If she had stayed in the bike lane like she was supposed to, none of this would have happened. But somehow I'm the one being punished for her poor judgment. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Marcus Whitfield looked horrified, his face drained of color. Emily Chen sat in the gallery, tears streaming down her face, shaking her head in disbelief. Catherine Wells's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Ms. Harrington, are you seriously suggesting that Maria Chen, a woman following all traffic laws, crossing at a designated crosswalk, wearing reflective gear, is responsible for her own death because you couldn't be bothered to follow basic traffic laws or make responsible decisions about drinking and drug use? Vivienne seemed to realize her mistake, but the damage was done. I didn't mean... No further questions, Your Honor. Vivienne practically fled the witness stand, Marcus Whitfield attempting damage control through redirect examination, but achieving nothing except highlighting his client's spectacular self-destruction. The defense rested shortly afterward, and closing arguments were scheduled for the following morning. This story reminds us that justice requires courage. The courage to look beyond wealth and status, the courage to hold powerful people accountable, and the courage to affirm that every human life has equal worth under the law. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel, because we're committed to sharing stories that prove justice can still triumph over privilege when judges refuse to be bought, intimidated, or swayed. Drop justice for all in the comments below and let us know where you're watching from, because this message of equal accountability needs to reach every corner of the world where people still believe that wealth shouldn't determine whether someone faces consequences for their actions.